Our first MVP took 1 year to build. Our second MVP took 2 months. Here's what we learned. We have all heard the quote, if you aren't embarrassed by your first version, then you've launched too late. But how true is it? And why do you need to launch early? What should you launch with? This episode is about launching your first product and how to do it the right way. Welcome to Just Grow With It. I've always been a little impulsive. I get an idea and just go with it. But that's the thing about life and business. You're always growing, learning, and figuring it out as you go. Welcome to Just Grow With It, the podcast where I share lessons I've learned as a founder and creator, the mistakes, the pivots, and the wins, and how staying consistent can change everything. So if you're ready to grow with me, let's get into it. Let's talk about an MVP and what even is an MVP. An MVP stands for minimal viable product, and it's essentially exactly what it sounds like. It is the earliest version, the simplest version of your product that is usable and that can be out in the market. It's not where you want to be a year from now. It's where you can start and actually get customers to interact with it and use the product in its very, very earliest form. Essentially, it is the simplest way to solve a problem. For example, at Rella, we wanted social media teams to be able to plan their content, get approvals, and auto-post it. That was the simplest way for us to solve the problem of all of the inefficient tools that were out there and all of the different tools social media managers and social media teams were using. Of course, we wanted to build a suite of features, but we knew that that was a mistake to start with a bunch of features if we didn't even know if the simplest problem wasn't able to be solved by us or wasn't a big enough problem that people even wanted to use our product. We knew that eventually we wanted to launch with a bunch of different features, but we also wanted to launch and start testing the product, and we wanted to get the product in the market. So the simplest way to solve the problem that social media teams were facing and the quickest way for us to actually put a product in the market was to really strip down the features back to the core problem and launch with the simplest features possible. So social media teams could create an account, they could plan content across platforms, they could share content with just a link, and they could auto-post across platforms. And that was Rella's second MVP. So what is a good timeline? Is it the 2 months? Is it the year? Is it something in between? And truthfully, it depends, but do not make the mistake that we did, where with our first MVP, we wanted it to be perfect, so we always were adding features. We constantly thought more equals better, and it was never good enough to release. We would do beta groups and test groups and ask people about specific features that they wanted. And of course, people are always going to give you feedback and suggestions, but we took that as we can't launch until these things are in the product. And it took us an entire year to launch. And then the second you launch, everything changes. Things are going to break. People aren't going to like the tool. It's not going to be intuitive. It's going to be overly complicated, which is why you need to make your MVP as simple as possible in the beginning so that you can learn with real users and with real feedback versus just what you think people would want to see. Our second MVP, like we said, only took 2 months. We were definitely on crunch time with that because it was a do or die situation, but I think it just shows you that it's possible to build a really great product in a really small amount of time. And we learned from our first mistakes. We knew that more did not equal better. Also, don't spend all your money on an MVP. Nowadays, with AI tools, you don't even need a developer for your MVP. There are tools like Lovable, Replit, Base 44, and so many other AI tools that you can use to build an actual product, or at least a very simple product, and get people's feedback on it, get testers, and see if this problem is even big enough. When we were starting Rella, those tools were not available. However, I've always wanted to try one of those tools and see how easy is it for me to make an app, especially as someone that is non-technical. And if you don't know what vibe coding is, it is simply a way that you can create an app or a website in minutes just by talking to this AI tool. So you can type, I want to build an app that does X, Y, and Z. These are the features that I want to have. These are the dashboards that I want to have. Create the app. And you are talking to it as it is coding the app. So it can develop one product and you can say, change this to that. This doesn't work. I want to add this. And it's essentially like talking to a developer, except it's being done in minutes rather than months. And these tools are just such a great way to build a version 1 because, like I said, you want to make sure that your MVP is actually solving a real problem and if it's worth pursuing adding more layers to this tool. And of course, when I say simple, I don't mean to start with literally nothing. It needs to be usable in order to get real feedback from people. But I think we overcomplicate things because we don't want to release something that doesn't have all of the features that maybe a competitor might have. But if you are going to come in and beat a competitor, you already need to be a lot better than them, even with the one feature that you're really good at. When people ask us about Rella's competitors, a lot of times I don't even say other content schedulers. I'll say things like Notion or Asana or ClickUp, because a lot of people are resorting to project management tools because the content schedulers that are out there just don't even have the project management capabilities that they need. And so they would rather sacrifice the content scheduler or add a content scheduler on top of it and use something like Notion, Asana, ClickUp in order to like organize all of their content. And so for us, we knew that we would be better if we could just get that flow in one tool and get it done correctly. Plan, share, auto post. So find that space with the problem you're solving and how can you make it as simple as possible. Now that you've built your MVP, how are you going to get your first users on this MVP? I definitely don't recommend launching out of thin air and just thinking, this product is so great, this problem is so big, people are just going to come to it. Very rarely does that happen. Of course, you have to have a good product, but a good product with zero marketing is a dead product. And running a business means balancing the product and the marketing. While you are building, you should be telling people about your business. You should be getting a waitlist set up. You should be sharing it on social media. And you should be doing all of this before you launch because you cannot expect to put out an MVP and just have people come the second you make your first post announcing that you just started a business. I'm planning on making an entire episode dedicated to your go-to-market strategy, but make sure that you balance building and sharing at the same time. And once you launch, you can share it with those users that did sign up for your waitlist, that do follow you on social media, that are excited about this. And you can always say that the tool is in beta and this isn't the final product, but people know that if you've been honest with them about building and if you share that this is a early version of what you're building and what is to come. And the first users of any product are just excited to be there. They are early adopters. The first users of any new tool want to be a part of a movement. No one says, I'm going to try this brand spanking new app, expect zero bugs, and be upset if it doesn't have a full suite of features right away. Your first users should be the ones that feel the problem the most and are just excited that there is a potential solution to this. And this is where community building is going to come in. You should start a Facebook group or a Slack channel for your first users so that you can be in constant communication with them. Encourage them to share what they like and what they don't like, and monitor how often they're using it. And if they're not using it a lot, why not? Your MVP is a testing ground and people appreciate being heard. So they are going to want to give you their opinions. And remember, when you have an MVP and you just launch a company, you need to be treating your first customers so well because they took a chance on trying out this new tool and helping you develop this product. So not only do you want to be there for them, but you also want to make sure that there is a space for their opinions to be heard. And now that you have your MVP out in the universe and you're starting to build a community, it is time to learn. Once you have launched your MVP, absolutely everything changes. You now have a product in the world with people actually touching it and using it. These are some things that you should look for with your MVP in order to improve the product. Number one, what isn't intuitive? As a business owner, I know Rella inside and out. There is not a single feature that I am confused about. I know how to do absolutely everything on the product, and I think it's the most intuitive app out there. But I would be naive to think that it's intuitive just because I know how to use it. I obviously know how to use it because I spend every day and every second in the product, and it came from our collective brain at Rella. New users don't have that advantage, so they are learning the product for the first time. You need to see it from a fresh set of eyes. So whether it's getting on a call with someone and watching them onboard or downloading apps that allow you to actually see what the person is doing on their screen and like what buttons they're clicking, where they're getting frustrated. I'll have some of my recommendations in the show notes because I cannot think of them on the top of my head. But this is where you'll find out what you need to improve and what you need to make more clear, because when people that aren't early adopters and the first people come on, they're not going to have as much patience. You'll figure out what's actually useful and what's not. There were so many things that we added in Rella, especially the first version, that we thought people would absolutely love. And a lot of the features that we added were suggestions from other users telling us that this is what they wanted. And then when we added it to the app, crickets, no one used it. And it's because it is your job to figure out what is useful and what isn't by kind of decoding what your customers are saying. So if people are telling you, I really want this feature, your job is not to implement the feature. It is to figure out why they want that feature and what is the best way for you to implement it in your business or into your product, because it's not always exactly how the user describes it. And when you have your MVP and your testing, you are definitely going to figure out what's useful in the product and what isn't. And lastly, you're going to learn if you have a good user experience or not. This kind of has to do with the intuitiveness, but just because you have a feature in the app doesn't mean that it is a good user experience. For example, do they have to click 5 different buttons in order to do one simple task? How can you streamline it? You should have some fundamental rules in your product, and one of those rules that we have is less clicks. How can we eliminate the number of clicks that people have to do? The reason why we have that is because in the past, we used to have 1 million clicks to do everything, and we thought it was fine because the feature was there, but it's annoying to have to take the user through a journey when they just want to do one simple thing. And lucky for you, you will figure all of this out the second people start interacting with your MVP. During this time, be receptive to feedback. There are so many times when people will give us feedback, and I find it to be the most intuitive thing. I don't understand how someone's confused. I don't understand how someone doesn't know how to do something. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can you not figure this out? But I need to take a step back and realize, wait, they're giving me very valuable feedback, because for every person that gives you feedback, there are 10 people that never reached out, that never emailed you, that never contacted you, but felt the exact same thing. And the way you know that is because how many times have you as a user interacted with something, gotten annoyed, and then never told the company? I am someone, even as a business owner, I need to get better at this. I don't give feedback. I will either just cancel my subscription, move on to something else, or just be frustrated. And that's not good, because that is going to cause people to churn, and it's going to cause people to be frustrated with your product. And the people that are giving you the feedback are being so generous with their time to take the time to explain what they are confused on, what they don't like, and how you can improve. Because big companies literally pay people to give them feedback and hop on calls with them. So if you are getting that for free from your early users, you just have to be appreciative about it. And your MVP is going to teach you if this is actually a big enough problem to solve, or if this is just a nice to have. Of course, you have to kind of figure out, is it just the MVP that I built, or is the problem not big enough? But during the MVP phase is when you'll figure out if this is something people even are willing to try. If they're not even willing to try to solve their problem, how big of a problem is it? And when you are in the early days, do not chase the shiny things. A very hard lesson for us to learn, because we, again, always wanted to add more and more, and we have really narrowed down our vision with what the product is today. We do not build for people other than social media teams. We are not looking to expand our demographic right now or our niche. We are really going deeper on the features that we currently have rather than constantly trying to expand. And we view it as vertical versus horizontal. Too many founders, ourselves included, we're constantly looking horizontally. If we add this, it's going to get better. And we kept adding more and more instead of going deep with what we did have. So we had a bunch of random things that worked fine, and that's being generous. And we had nothing that we did really well. Whereas now when we're building Rella, we have a lot that we do well because we're constantly improving the product that we do have. And people love our product, which is why we want to stay as focused as possible and make sure we're going as deep as possible with our current product. Which means there are going to be times when you have to say no to a customer. If a customer is saying, I really want this, that has nothing to do with what you are currently building, it's not to say that you're never going to do it, but the beginning stages is not the time to expand horizontally. It is a time to go deeper. At Rella, a lot of people ask us for payments. They want to be able to sign contracts, get paid with their clients all within Rella, because they want Rella to be all in one. What that tells us is that they love Rella so much that they want their entire system to be done on Rella. Although that's great to know, and of course we've looked at the possibility of adding payments in Rella 1.0 because that was something people had asked, but when we added it, we never did it right, and it didn't make sense to continue to add sideways and horizontally than just going deeper in the product that we did have. Our focus right now is to improve the product as much as possible, add features if it makes sense rather than constantly expanding. And eventually down the line, we would love to add payments and be the all-in one-stop shop for social media teams and contractors. But right now, our short-term goal is not to be that. It is to be the absolute best at what we do before we expand to the next thing. And you have to be comfortable saying no. As an early stage founder, when you are just dying to get customers, you really, really want to chase the shiny thing, but you have to take a step back and say that you are just building something as simple as possible and doing that the best way possible. If you guys have any questions about building an MVP or building a product, please comment them down below and share your experience. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter that goes out every single Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's episode, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.